Okay, good afternoon. I'm Zach Myers with the Center for Dairy Excellence. We'll go ahead and get started with today's Protecting Your Profits webinar. Thank you for taking the time to join the webinar today. And if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box or at the end of the presentation, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question verbally, that's fine too. So as usual, my intent today, or my goal today, is to provide an overview of current dairy markets and to review risk management opportunities. This is all public information, and while I may express some opinions, these are certainly not recommendations. So with that, we'll just we'll get into the presentation here. One addition to the agenda from normal is the February milk production report wraps up 2022 numbers. It has finalized numbers for 2022 on various dairy statistics. So I've got a few slides to start the program here that shows where Pennsylvania stands within the top dairy states and in comparison to U.S. averages. So then after that's just current markets, exports, and then risk management, dairy margin coverage, dairy revenue protection before we to finish things up. So to get started on the finalized 2022 numbers, so all the next I think there's 4 or 5 tables here coming up. They're all set up basically the same way. The states. So we'll just I got to PA numbers highlighted in yellow just for quick reference. So this first one is total milk production, and those numbers in the columns are in millions of pounds. So California is the top dairy state here in the country with almost 41.9 billion pounds of milk production. This is down from last year. Pennsylvania, as you see down there, is ranked number 8 with just under 10 billion pounds. And this is the first time Pennsylvania has been in under 10 billion pounds, and I think at least a couple of decades. So dropped below that 10 billion threshold for the first time in several years. And then the U.S. at 226 billion, or 200, almost 226.5 billion was up slightly, 0.1%. And this is 169 million pounds more than what it was last year. Pennsylvania does remain as the 8th largest dairy state in terms of production here in the country. Cow numbers, Pennsylvania is 5th in cow numbers, but 8th in total production. And of course, we'll see the reason for that here on the next slide. But Pennsylvania did lose 1.3% of its cows, so down about 6,000 cows from 2021 to 468,000. California and Wisconsin are the number 1 and 2 states, and then comparing that to the U.S. numbers, there's 9.4 million cows that ended in 2022. This is 47,000 less than 21, or 0.5% less. So here in the milk per cow, annualized milk per cow, Pennsylvania at 21,259 pounds per cow is it lags the national average by 2,828 pounds. The national average is 24,087 pounds. This is the first time basically in the history that the U.S. has eclipsed that 24,000 pounds per cow threshold. And I draw your attention to Michigan and Minnesota. Michigan is there's about 1,010 dairies in Michigan, so that 27,430 is a state average, which of course is easily ranks first in the nation in terms of milk cow efficiency. And Minnesota is 23,128, comparing that to Pennsylvania, 21,259. Michigan and Minnesota produce more milk than Pennsylvania with less cows, and that's strictly due to the efficiency of their cows versus the ones here in Pennsylvania. So if we were able to match the national average, just over 24,000 pounds, we'd be able to overcome Minnesota as the 7th largest milk production state. Dairy farm numbers, it was sort of the national trend to lose numbers last year. The U.S. lost 1,910 dairies, or 6.4% of its dairies last year, and Pennsylvania didn't lose as many percentage wise as the U.S., but still 3.8% of the dairies in Pennsylvania exited the business for whatever reason in 2022, and that with 5,000 dairies ending the year, and that puts, historically, Pennsylvania is ranked number 2 in the nation in terms of total dairy cows, and that trend, of course, continued with Wisconsin having the most dairies with 6,350 dairies to finish 2022. And then the last slide I have here on the 22 statistics is average herd size. The trend across the country for the last several years has been consolidation, and of course this continued last year. The U.S. jumped from 317 cows per dairy up to 337 cows per dairy in 2020. This is a difference of 20 cows, and then about 6.3%. Pennsylvania, although has a small herd size relative to the other top 10 states, and as a matter of fact, Pennsylvania has the 4th smallest average herd size in the nation at 94. But there is a continuation even in Pennsylvania for herd size to grow. And so now moving on to current markets. Milk production across the country in January was 17.675 billion pounds. This is up 8% or 0.8% compared to February 2022. U.S. cow numbers were up 37,000 head year over year to 9.417 million head, and up 12,000 head compared to January revised numbers. Milk production per cow was up 0.4% to 1,877 pounds compared to last year. This is equivalent to about 77 pounds per lactating cow per day, assuming 87% of mature cows are lactating at any given time, or about 0.2 of a pound more than what she produced last year. Pennsylvania cow numbers are down about 2,000 from last year and equal to January at 466,000. Pennsylvania milk output per cow was also up 0.2 of a pound, just like the U.S. was. But it's, of course, less at 68.8 pounds. Pennsylvania milk per cow was 4 pounds more than a year ago at 1,675 pounds per cow during February. Total production was basically flat in Pennsylvania at 781 million pounds, which was just down 0.1% compared to January a year ago. And then your dairy cow slaughter numbers will be released tomorrow afternoon. On the dairy product stock side, the butter and cheese, the cold storage report will be released. That's another report that will be released tomorrow. But January lags, so the January non-fat dry milk lags. So January is the most recent data currently, and that's up 3.9% to 271 million pounds. At $2.39 per pound, February butter price is 25 cents less than a year ago. The global dairy trade butter price remains slightly higher than the U.S. price, but the EU butter price is now more competitive internationally than U.S. at $2.15 a pound. Cheese price is 5 cents less than last year at $1.94 and is considerably lower than the global dairy trade price of $2.31, but just slightly cheaper than the EU's price at $2.02. At $1.23 per pound, non-fat dry milk is similar to global dairy trade and EU prices at $1.26 and $1.15 respectively. And on the production side, January butter production was up 201 million pounds or 3.8%. Cheese was up 3.2% to 1.209 billion pounds. And non-fat dry milk at 177 million pounds was up 4% compared to a year ago. And this basically follows. You're going to have more. You're going to have more powder stocks are going to build when milk production is up, and milk production over the last 3 or 4 months has been up year over year, and is so it makes has more supply. There's more milk supply, and so that market is being balanced by turning that extra supply into more powder. On the demand side, butter at 140 million pounds of disappearance was down 13% compared to January a year ago. This was caused by both exports and domestic usage being down. Domestic usage, as you see there on the slide, accounts for 95% of the disappearance in butter. So swings in the domestic market for butter are going to have a greater impact on milk price than international. Same thing goes with cheese. Domestic usage of cheese accounts for 94% of disappearance, at least in January. Total cheese, American plus other style cheeses were totaled 1.198 billion pounds. And exports and domestic usage were both up, although domestic usage was relatively flat compared to a year ago. Non-fat dry milk and skim milk powder at 199 million pounds was down 4% versus last January. This was caused by both exports and domestic usage being down. The milk powder is opposite of butter and cheese in terms of what accounts for disappearance. Most of the powder we make here in the United States, 76% in January, leaves the nation's borders as an exported product. Based on March 21st closing prices, Class 3 milk is at its low this month at $18.05. Where in general increases to a high of 1964 before starting to decline again through February of next year. At $19.03 a hundredweight, the 12-month average Class 3 milk price is just 1 cent less than a month ago, but still $1.12 more than the 5-year rolling average of $17.91 per hundredweight. Class 4 hits its low next month at $18.04 per hundredweight before steadily improving to $19.77 in November before it starts a gradual descent through at least February 2024. At $19.10, the 12-month average price is 55 cents higher than last month and still about $2 more than the 5-year average of $17.14. So for January exports started off the nation relatively strongly at 16% more than January a year ago. 181,676 million metric tons of milk solid equivalent dairy products were shipped across U.S. borders during the month of January, and with tonnage up, the value was also up for a total of $710.9 million, which is 21% more than January of 2022. So moving on to the final topic of risk management, dairy margin coverage we'll talk about first. The January margin was $7.94 per hundredweight. This triggered an $1.56 indemnity at the max 950 margin coverage. This indemnity, the January indemnity covers all but 3 cents per hundredweight of the annual premium cost. Feed cost increased by 22 cents to $15.16 per hundredweight, and the U.S. all milk price fell $1.60 to $23.10. The February margin will be announced next Friday, March 31st. So projections for the remainder of the year, the $7.94 you see there is an actual price. The rest are projected price. But if you'll notice what I've got circled there, the DMC margin is expected to remain below that maximum 950 margin coverage through September. With October, November, and December margins not really that much higher above. Hopefully markets will improve and those margins will improve, but as it stands now, September, the margin will remain tight through the remainder of the year. Dairy revenue protection, based on Well, first of all, March 15th was the last day that second quarter 2023 policies were offered. The sales period now is third quarter 2023 through the third quarter 2024 until June 15th, when sales on quarter 3 2023 will end. A 100% class 3 95% price protected floor could be set from a low of $17.88 in the second quarter of next year to a high of $18.53 in the fourth quarter of this year, for an average of 39 cents per hundredweight, with a third quarter 2024 policies not offered yet. On the class 4 side, floors could be set from a low of $18.14 per hundredweight for the third quarter of this year, up to $18.71 in the fourth quarter of this year, for an average cost of 43 cents, with second quarter 2024 and third quarter 2024 policies not offered. And typically when these later months aren't offered, it's due to lack of trading at that far out to be able to establish baseline floor prices and premium fees. And with that, that's all I have prepared for this month. The next Protecting Your Profits webinar will be on April 26th, 2023 at noon. We'll have guest speaker Dr. Chris Wolf, who's the E.V. Baker Professor of Ag Economics at Cornell University. He's going to provide us an update on what federal milk marketing order reforms have been submitted to the USDA in the hopes of being granted a hearing, and where we are in the process of potential milk marketing order reforms this year. So with that, thank you. And I appreciate you joining us today, and I look forward to talking with you next week.